go ahead and dive in. Thank you for joining us this morning. We appreciate everyone's time. We know it's a busy time of year. Happy New Year to everyone. We've got a lot of information to share. This is the BEAD Project Application Guidance webinar, and you are on the call with the Arizona Commerce Authority, State Broadband Office, and our consultants, and a number of BEAD potential applicants who are on the call as well. So again, today's session is for BEAD application guidance. James, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, I think that is the agenda for today. Okay, so quickly, the agenda today is for the BEAD program overview and timeline, a very high-level overview and timeline. And the focus and the meat of this webinar today is the project application. So it's the overview and details about the project information and the portal. So today's session is not about pre-registration. It's not about the challenge process or market sounding or anything leading up to this phase. We are now in the application phase of the BEAD implementation, and we will focus solely on the BEAD application today. So if there are questions from people on the call today that might relate to more general BEAD implementation or for instance, challenge process, market sounding, those questions, we ask that you send us an email for those questions. We've got to preserve today's time just solely for the application because we have 1 hour. There are also plenty of resources, which I will plug into the chat in a bit, on our website. So every recorded webinar we did for the challenge process, pre-registration, market sounding, every Q&A session, everything has been recorded. There are FAQs and a lot of resources available on our website. So we ask that you access those. And then also, if you still have questions, to please email us. And now we'll go into quick introductions. So those who you've got on the call today, I will do an introduction for them in the interest of time. But first, we'd like to start with who is on the call with us. So I have enabled the chat, and everyone who's in the call, if you could please tell us your name and the organization that you represent in the chat, that would be great. So you can just plug in your name, your organization, and let us know. I can see those are starting to fill in now. We really appreciate that. That gives us an idea of who's on the call and lets everyone else have an idea as well. And then for those of us, your panelists today, I'm going to go with who I see on my screen, which might be different on yours, but I'll make sure I get everyone. So I'll start with ACA first, the Arizona Commerce Authority. Of course, we've got Sandeep, if you can wave. Sandeep is our broadband director. We have Amy Dorman, our deputy director. And then we also have Marissa Lambert, who is new to the office and working with grants. We're very excited to have her here. And who else do we have? We also have KPMG. We've got from our consultants, we have Iris and James and also Divya. Thank you to them for joining. And then last but certainly not least is Richmond, who is joining us from Ready, and he will be speaking to the portal today. So again, today's session is all about the application, the process, and the portal. So the technical aspects of that portal. All right, so again, thank you for inputting your information here into the chat so we have an idea of who's joining us. We appreciate you making the time. And you'll see the last item on our table of contents is the Q&A. I do want to emphasize today that Q&A, all questions will go through the Q&A portion of the webinar. I will disable the chat so that all questions will go specifically through that Q&A portion. So any questions you have, definitely plug those into that Q&A portion, and we will stop periodically throughout the presentation to make sure that we are also addressing those questions as we go through different topics. All right, so based on that, James, if you can go to the next slide, we will get this started. We are recording. Okay, here we go. So as you all know, our quick high-level BEAD program overview is this. So there's a lot of information on these slides. I'm not going to read them to you, but I will give you the highlights. So we know that Arizona has received almost $1 billion in funding from the NTIA for the BEAD program, which is historic and fantastic. And this is to support deployment of broadband service to unserved and underserved BSLs and eligible CAIs. And the unserved, just to clarify, is 25 down, 3 up, and the underserved is 100 down or 20 up. The criteria for those project areas, applicants who are applying must serve every unserved and underserved BSL within a location. Applications that cover all eligible BSLs and the maximum number of CAIs will score higher, and partnerships are definitely encouraged. So if any of you are partnering together, there must be one lead sub-grantee that's responsible for the project execution. And for BEAD applicants, there are mapping tools and geospatial files that are available through the portal and the website as well. And next slide, please. The sub-grantee selection process. So high-level overview here is that ACA has designed a comprehensive and transparent selection process. It's aimed at selecting the most qualified applicants for the broadband deployment in Arizona, and there are two phases. Phase 1 was market sounding and had market sounding and also pre-registration. Pre-registration is in progress right now, and now we are entering phase 2, which is where pre-registered applicants can submit their applications for round 1, which opens Monday, as you all know. And then round 2, and then after that, the review process. We'll evaluate the applications based on the criteria that are outlined in the BEAD NOFO and in the ACA scoring rubric, which is a part of our initial proposal, volume 2. So once I stop speaking, I will start putting all sorts of information into the chat, putting those links in to make sure everybody's got links to those resources, the NOFO, initial proposal, volume 2, and the webinars, all the resources I've been speaking of. All right, next slide, please. And then the timeline. You're all familiar with the timeline. We are right now launching round 1. So pre-registration has been open. So if I'm looking at this, we've got starting at the top in the blue on the left is that pre-registration. So that began on November 4th, and that will remain open until May. But the important part to distinct here is that round 1 starts Monday, and that pre-registration is mandatory and must be submitted and approved in order to actually apply. So if you are applying for round 1 and you have already done that, you should be receiving your approval from us soon if you have not already received that. But right now, as far as where we are in the green, right there, about to launch round 1. And round 1 application intake will go until February 5th. So if you are applying for round 1 and all applicants are encouraged to submit their applications in round 1, that will close on February 5th. And then we will begin the review and the negotiations. Round 2 will then launch on April 12th. So again, we are right there in that green section, about to launch round 1. All right, so next slide, please. All right, I'm about to turn it over, but before I do, I'm gonna give you an example. Again, where you're posting your questions will be in the Q&A. I actually can't submit anything in there, but when you submit your questions in the Q&A, we ask that you put your name and your organization in with your question, because we can see your name, but we cannot see your organization. So when you submit that question, please tell us also where you're from. And that Q&A portion is what you'll use. And I will now turn it over to Iris and Divya for getting into the project application overview.
Sounds good. Thanks, Kelly. All right, let's talk about why we're here today, project application. So before we dive into all the details, just want to give everybody an overview and highlight some key requirements for the project application. So first and foremost, the most important thing is that all applicants, you must have your pre-registration application submitted and approved by ACA before you have access to the financial data for the project areas. And also wanted to highlight that some of the pre-registration applications, it has some RFCs or requests for clarifications or revisions needed. You have to address those RFCs before submitting your BEAD applications. Otherwise, we won't be able to review or accept your project applications. So just wanted to make sure that that's the first thing that you need to complete. And then moving on, so each applicant, you are required to submit one application per project area. So that means if you plan to apply for multiple project areas, say 10 project areas, you have to submit 10 different applications. And each project area, each application will be evaluated individually and scored accordingly. So that means they will be scored separately and then they may not be awarded together. So if you plan to submit 10 applications, you may not be awarded 10, like every 10 of them, because they'll be evaluated separately. And that also means if there's any efficiencies that you're expecting to apply for adjoining project areas, you have to incorporate them separately into each application that you're submitting. At the end of round one, we'll make tentative awards, and some of the project areas may not go into round two, so just keep in mind. And also just wanted to let you know that ACA will assess the applications against the criteria in BEAD NOFO and ACA scoring rubric. For each application to be qualified for BEAD funding, it has to receive a minimum of 250 points or higher. And then moving on to proposed technology type. So for each application, you can see there are 3 options for proposed technology type that will ask you to fill out. So breaking it down to 2 categories, part A will be 100% fiber, and part B will be fiber, reliable, or other alternative technologies. For 100% fiber, we will require that you provide A1, 100% fiber-based deployment, including all the CAIs and outliers. And A2, also 100% fiber, but including CAIs, but excluding any outliers. And part B will be where you provide technology solutions for fiber and other reliable or alternative technology deployment. So you are allowed to provide one of the 3, 2 of the 3, but we strongly encourage that you provide all 3 technology solutions so we can evaluate and see which one is most financially feasible. And we'll talk about more about the outliers and proposed technology as we move into the sections, but just wanted to give everybody a high level about the project application overview. Next slide, please.
And as we start to dig in, there are some questions that are coming into the Q&A. So I just want to let everybody know that we see those questions and they will be answered. And the first 2 that are in there, I'm going to read them so that everyone can hear what they are, and then we can answer them as we go. So the first question is from Jonathan Adelstein. Jonathan, if you could plug in where you're from, that would be great. How long do you expect pre-registration review to take before we get responses? And then a question from Lisa from NRTC, can adjacent project areas be combined into a single application? So Iris and Divya, I'll let you answer these where appropriate. If not now, let me know, we can do those later.
Kelly, I'll take that question if that's okay. Kelly, can you see me on the camera?
Yeah, awesome. I can hear you.
So I will answer, the first question came from Jonathan. Jonathan, if you can post your affiliation with the organization, that would be great. Just an FYI, so the pre-registration normally takes 3 business days on our side to review. So if you submit it today, it might be next week. So one thing the team has highlighted in this process that without the pre-registration, the potential subrecipient will not be able to see the financials information or underlying data when the procurement opens. So we encourage you to submit your pre-registration as soon as possible. To give you an example, we discussed also about RFC. Iris just mentioned about the RFC request for clarification. So if there is a small item which is missing, we might conditionally approve you and send you an email that within a time frame you have to provide that information. But in the meantime, you are approved. If those are some big ticket items like a company's plan for cybersecurity or supply chain management, those would be requested before we approve the pre-application. But however, we are trying to approve those applications conditionally without condition within 72 hours. So please feel free to submit that as soon as possible, and so that we can approve you. That's the question from Jonathan, I believe. And Chad has a question it says that can adjacent project area be combined into a single application? No, you can select multiple project area in the tool, and we will talk about the tool a little bit more later. But when you are submitting an application, that will prompt you to enter individual data for every single project area. So it cannot be combined into a single application. Every single project area will be evaluated separately from its neighboring project area. So every single data set, every single questionnaire connected with that individual project area need to be submitted separately. I have a question from Joe Casey. It says, I heard from a vendor yesterday that phase 1 applications was only for all fiber project areas. That doesn't sound like the case. Can you please verify? So the phase 1 applications, or round 1 of the application, is recommended by the NTIA to accept only fiber only applications. But we as an administrating entity is also accepting other forms of application as well. So if someone wants to submit a fixed wireless or cable technology based application, they can submit that in phase 1. But yes, we will only evaluate all fiber applications for a specific project area in round 1. Any application which is not all fiber application will be moved for an evaluation in round 2. So that's, I think, all the questions, Kelly, and I will send it back to you and Iris.
Great, thank you. I'll go in and once those questions are answered, then I will say that we answered those live. And for those participating, you should be able to see the open questions and the answered questions. And I have answered a question about the webinars, the decks, the recordings. You can see the details in the answered section as well. But Iris and Divya, I'll turn it back to you.
All right. So now we have on the screen the project application slide. So our project application form is broken down into 18 sections. And you can see the 18 sections in the green project area application section below. And just wanted to highlight that for section 1, the applicant information, and section 17, cybersecurity compliance and supply chain risk management compliance. If you plan to submit multiple applications, you only need to complete these 2 sections once. So once you complete these 2 sections, if you submit a second, a third, a fourth application, these 2 sections will be auto-populated for you. And also just wanted to note again about proposed technology level that's under section 4 and section 12. So you'll be required to provide the requested information for each proposed technology for each project area under section 4 and section 12. And now we can go to the next slide and start diving into the details for each section. All right, here we go. So on top, we're going to talk about section 1.1, applicant information, and 1.2, project executive summary on this slide. And under the section title, you can also see we reference the application questionnaire and the application guide. So after our webinar, we'll send out this deck, and then you can click on the link. It will take you to the questionnaire and the guide. And then it also has referenced the sections that are relevant to the slide that we're talking about. So for applicant information, this is where we'll ask you to provide us with your legal name, your entity name, and your mailing address. We'll also ask for applicant contact details. This is where you'll provide your point of contact. This person has to be a director or officer level from your organization. We'll also ask you to provide your applicant's unique entity identifier, the tax ID number, broadband provider, and service provider types. And if you have any consortium or partnership entities, we'll ask you to provide a narrative that explains the organization structure, role, relationship, and significance of the partnership entity. And the narrative should also provide individual expertise and your working capital and how you're going to successfully carry out and complete the project. For any contractors or subcontractors that you'll be using, if you plan to use any of them and you already know the names of the contractors or subcontractors, this is where you'll provide details of at least one example of each contractor's and subcontractor's past performance. On the right-hand side, we have project executive summary. So this is where you'll provide a high-level summary of each project area that you're proposing to serve. So in the high-level summary, you'll be asked to provide BEAD eligible locations that you're proposing to serve, proposed technology that will be 100% fiber or fiber and other alternative technologies. And if it's not 100% fiber, we'll ask you to provide the % breakdown. We'll also ask you to provide delivery approach and timeline and budget summary and match request. And we talk about the different types of technology here. So there are 3 options that you can provide during round 1 application. That's A1, 100% fiber, including CAIs and outliers. A2, 100% fiber, including CAIs, but excluding outliers. And part B, fiber, reliable, and alternative technologies. So you're allowed to provide all 3 of them. We encourage that you do. But for round 1, we will only assess and evaluate part A1 and A2, that's 100% fiber.
Okay, I do want to
All right.
address, there's a couple questions in the chat. The one from John Moody, please explain reference benchmark, cost estimate, and where do we get that information? We will share details about that a bit later in the presentation. That answer is coming. And then Sandeep, if you want to respond to Mark Breen, I think it's kind of we've alluded to this already, but Mark types, it sounds like phase 1 will only evaluate fiber submissions, then fixed wireless will be evaluated in phase 2. My question is, if we are submitting for fixed wireless technologies, is it still beneficial to submit during phase 1? And quick reminder for everybody, please include the organization that you're from in your question. It helps all of us to better understand the question. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Kelly. I'll start with John's question. I know when Richmond will demo the tool, he will be able to show it better. But the reference benchmark cost is the allocation, the financial allocation. As you are all probably aware, Arizona got $993 million. So certain portion of that was allocated for every single project area. So reference benchmark cost is that. So if you hover your mouse in the project area application, you will see the number of households eligible for BEAD funding and Community Anchor Institute. Along with that, you will see a number. So if you divide that number with the number of households and Community Anchor Institute, you will have a tentative number basically on your side, that how much every single household from the estimate from federal government and ACA will be needed financially to connect those households with high-speed fiber connectivity. So that's the reference benchmark cost. We'll show you more later in the presentation. Second question from Mark Breen. So Mark, I strongly feel that still submitting a fixed wireless-based solution in round 1 is very important, because there might be a lot of combination of the applications, right? So if you look into our scoring criteria, if there is a project area X with 500 households and an internet service provider come in and provide solutions or a proposal for 100 households with fiber and 400 households with satellite, suppose, Mark, if your organization come in and provide a solutions for 50 household fiber and 450 households with fixed wireless, at the end of the day, fixed wireless is a better solution from the scoring criteria mentioned in our volume 2. This is not something we believe or we came up with. This is the scoring criteria based on the NOFO we derived in volume 2, which was published last year. Actually, I lost track, so I apologize. It was published in 2023 and was approved by NTIA in 2024. So if you look at that and put those technologies in the scoring criteria, it still does make sense to submit the fixed wireless application. Round 2 is technically, it's optional. There are a lot of states completed their BEAD project areas in round 1. Extremely lucky. We hope that happens for us. So it's very important to submit all the application, even if that get evaluated in round 2, in round 1. However, it's not mandatory. You can still submit an application during round 2 and still be competitive. But when round 2 application opens, and that map is going to be basically the same map what you will be seeing when round 1 open. If some areas are grayed out where you are interested, that means those areas are gone, or we already selected a subgrantee for that. So to make yourself competitive in this space, I would highly recommend the broadband office highly recommends you submit an application during round 1.
Okay, there's a couple more questions that have popped up into the chat. Next is from Alec Miller from Trepic Networks. What defines a project area?
So as per the BEAD NOFO, the project area can be one single household and can be the whole state. So based on the geography, based on the terrain and amount of broadband serviceable location here in the state, Arizona Commerce Authority divided the whole state into multiple project areas. So if you, Kelly, if you can post the link, those project area has multiple households, which includes the BEAD eligible households and the community anchor institute. You will be required to serve in this process. So the project areas are basically a specific geographic area which was connected together for BEAD application purposes.
Okay, I'll get that link in the chat in a bit. Next question from Alan Torgensen. We submitted the pre-app December 17th. If we have not heard anything since submitting, is it still under review? Alan from South Central Utah Telephone Association.
Yeah. So Alan, most of the team was in the meantime was out due to vacation and stuff. We received a lot of pre-registration application in this process. So we are reviewing that. I actually reviewed that application yesterday, so you will hear from us today with our feedback.
I just wanted to provide an update. Alan, your application is approved yesterday on the portal. So
awesome.
I think you'll get an email. We requested a few RFCs from you. Yeah, let us know if you need additional information.
Thank you, Iris. Really appreciate that.
Yep, and definitely I'll put the email in the chat, but if you have questions or you don't see anything about the approval or you didn't get that email, let us know, and you'll send that email to broadband@azcommerce.com. I'll put that into the chat. Couple more questions here, and just for everybody to note, we are almost at the 30-minute mark. So Aaron from Trico, reference mark price for PAUs equals total scope or expected grant support?
That would be total scope. So you have to consider the 25% grant matching in there.
Okay, next is from Chad Roop, which I believe is either Trico or Trepic. If an applicant is awarded a grant to a BSL, and if another provider builds out a 100 by 20 service or fiber to that specific BSL, before the awardee is able to build fiber to that location, is the awardee still required to build fiber to that location?
That's a great question, Chad. It depends what timeline we are talking about. So if I can give you a quick timeline update here, we will be submitting our final proposal to NTIA on August 1st of this year. And there would be a time like 4 months or 6 months. We don't know what kind of time frame NTIA will take from their side to approve our final proposal. Please do note that all 50 states will be going through the same process. Arizona is one of the early states, so we're hoping to get an expedited approval, but it depends. It depends on the new administration, their speed to approve these final proposals. So if you look into final proposal guidance document, which came out from NTIA, I forgot the page number, but Kelly can send out a communication. It basically tells us that any state will be kind of required to deduplicate the data until we sign the contract. So what does deduplication means? That means once we go through this final proposal process, we will be still kind of bound to take off any area which is funded by any federal grant or a state grant, to take it out so that we are not double dipping on the federal or state funding. I don't have a whole lot of information on that. It can get difficult based on what we opened as an RFP and taking areas off or taking households off from there. So we're still talking to NTI, but there is a guidance in there. However, once we sign the final agreement with you, hopefully in 2026, and then you have 4 years to build it, there will be no change of location at that point. If there is a change of location at that point, an ISP does not want to build because there is already a fiber provider there, then definitely that need to be a discussion between the state broadband office and the ISP, and the finance, that means the project allocation and funding, need to be adjusted in that way. So that's the most important part. But after we sign the contract, I don't think there will be any change in the location at that point.
Got it. Thank you. And then Alan Torgensen from South Central, will the BEAD application be accessed through the same portal and with the same login credentials as the pre-reg?
Yes.
Also, okay, so yes to that first part. Then will the information we provided in the pre-app be preloaded into the application?
Yes, only 2 sections will be preloaded, which will be applicable towards your application, is cybersecurity, supply chain, and minority-owned business certifications, which is equal across the board.
All right, one more question from Wayne from Hopi. Thanks for joining us. Will the portal ever show submit date time, approval date time info?
That's a great question, Wayne. I don't know on top of my head. We are testing the portal. I didn't notice it. It should be. I think I'll let Richmond answer that question when Richmond is presenting his part.
Got it. All right, thank you. Okay, back to Iris and Divya.
All right, I think we can move on to 1.3, the project area. Okay, I'll just quickly go through this. So the final project areas, they're posted as of December 23rd last year. And the final project areas have been updated slightly based on your feedback that we collected during market sounding. And when you go on the portal, you'll see there's a drop-down list for each project area. And when you click on each project area, it will show you the cost estimation for each project area. And that is only if your pre-registration application has been submitted and approved. Otherwise, you won't be able to see the cost estimation. So for each project area, when you select them, you'll see the total number of eligible BSLs that includes unserved and underserved locations. It will also show you the total number of eligible CAI locations. So all the CAI locations will be included when you first select the project areas, but you're allowed to deselect some of the CAI locations. And also based on the technology that you're proposing for each project area, you may be required to provide a breakdown percentage for the technology that you're proposing. Okay, we can move on to 1.4. All right, so for project infrastructure, so each applicant, you can select priority projects and non-priority projects. Priority projects are defined as the ones that must offer high quality broadband services that meet specific performance threshold per the BEAD NOFO, or the ones that provide services via end-to-end fiber optic facilities to reach end users. Those are defined as priority broadband projects. And non-priority broadband projects are the ones, anything other than what I mentioned. So all the other last mile deployment projects providing a minimum speed of 100/20 Mbps. Those are considered non-priority projects. So although the design is for priority projects to receive Part A, 100% fiber deployment, and non-priority projects to receive fiber plus alternative technologies, the applicants, you have the options to provide either. However, ACA has a strong preference towards end-to-end fiber solutions for all priority broadband projects when it's financially feasible. And I also just wanted to note that priority and non-priority projects have different scoring rubrics. So when you're providing the infrastructure and technology details, you're going to be asked to provide total estimated miles of conduits or cables that you're going to deploy, or the total number of proposed towers. And for any middle mile infrastructure, we'll ask you to provide total estimated miles of fibers or cables that you're planning to deploy as well. And for both priority and non-priority projects, for priority projects, we'll ask you to select applicable network technologies and associated speeds, and we'll also ask you to provide a split ratio. For non-priority projects, again, we'll ask you to select the technology that you intend to deploy, and then we'll ask you to provide the max upload and download speed per sector and the number of subscribers. And for wireless-based technology, we'll ask you to provide spectrum bands. And we can move on to the next slide. All right, so for section 1.5, open access network options, this is where we'll ask you to confirm if your organization intends to offer an open access network for the entire useful life of the network asset. And if you do, we'll ask you to provide a narrative that details your open access policy. And for 1.6, the network design, we'll ask you to submit a high-level network design. This network design will have to be certified by a PE. And if that PE, the professional engineer, is not licensed in Arizona, then we'll ask you to provide a BEAD waiver. And also for any outliers that you want to exclude from your project areas, the outliers are defined as if that BSL will cost you 1.5 times more than the average cost to serve the rest of the BSLs, then that location is considered an outlier, and then you can exclude that location from your project area. And for you to define a location as an outlier, we'll ask you to provide details on the technology and the cost to serve each outlier.
We've got a question in the chat. Does network design need to be PE certified at application or award?
At the application.
Okay, so at application. Thank you.
Yep.
Go ahead, Iris.
I will turn it over to Divya for the next section.
All right. Thank you, Iris, for setting the stage and giving a background of the application. So diving into the next sections, the next section would be on the scalability and resiliency. So this is further divided into 3 sections. So the whole section under this would be more of a narrative responses, where applicants are required to furnish detailed information regarding the scalability and resiliency of their networks for each project area included in the application. Here, the applicants will provide how the proposed network design guarantees scalability, accommodate the connectivity needs of the project area over the network's entire lifespan. So here, they will outline the organization strategy for retrofitting and or hardening the current broadband infrastructure to resist potential damage and degradation due to climate threat. And this description could also include the redundancies in both the network and power sources of no less than 50% of the BEAD eligible locations. Following this is the network outages section. So applicants must confirm that appropriate measures will be taken to ensure that the network outages do not exceed on an average of 48 hours over a 365 period, except in the case of natural disasters or any other force majeure occurrences. In the event that the applicants are not are unable to meet this requirement, they must provide an explanation for the same. And based on that, they should describe the network design and measures that the organization is planning to undertake to meet these requirements for the planned network outage. Following this is the climate assessment section. So applicants will provide an initial assessment of identifying potential climate risks that would be impacting the proposed project for the project area. And based on that, the next part of it would include for the applicants to provide information on how the proposed network design will withstand, respond, or recover rapidly from disruptions caused by the climate conditions. These would involve detailing out the strategies it could be like elevating structures or employing wet or dry proofing, flood proofing, flood damage resistance, and other strategies. Following that would be the network infrastructure resiliency and climate readiness assessment. So here applicants will be required to provide details on the different readiness options or the process plans that are in place within the organization to address the risk of climate risk, and also the plans to mitigate the ones that are expected to develop. So the next section, please, James. So based on the initial section, the following section also is entails to the environmental policy and National Historic Preservation Act. So applicants will be required to provide a high-level description of the site and the surrounding areas, identifying any natural or man-made geographical, physical, or other factors that might pose development of the project. This could also include flood zones or any impacted wetland and waterways in the area. And following that, the applicants will be required to provide on how the project will be implemented, including outlining the approach to remaining compliant with the State Historical Preservation Act, the NEPA requirements, and also the NHPA requirements. Based on the description, the applicants will also be providing feasible plans to mitigate the adverse environmental effects and historical preservation impacts, basically detailing how the BEAD NOFO requirements will be included in their plan. Following this would be the make ready section. So applicants will be required to describe the make ready activities that organization has already completed or has planned to complete for the project area. It could be surveying of the site or obtaining necessary costs or engineering designings, anything of that sort. So whatever prior activities that the applicants have done for the particular project area, they can provide a description of that. And the next section is the timeline section. So applicants will be providing an overview of the timeline indicating key milestones and the number of months needed between the execution of the grant agreement and the delivery of the service. So here the applicants will have an option to provide Part A and or Part B. There will be an attachment provided here, a template for project schedule, where the applicants will fill in those details and upload those and also provide a narrative responses of the description. Further, applicants will be required to confirm that it will be provided no later than 4 years from the date of which the subgrantee receives the subgrant from ACA. So the next section is the barrier and permitting requirements. So under
pardon me, there's 2 questions in the chat that I'm going to address really quickly before we get to this slide. All right, so one from Chris from Bluespan Wireless. Thank you for letting us know. When we apply to run fiber in the project areas, if we apply for 20 areas and win 16, can we decline some areas if we win more than we expect and want to reduce our match requirement and project mileage?
That's a good question, Chris, but from a state broadband office perspective, we want to avoid that in any condition. And it's important for us to make sure that all the project areas are served with the preferred technology we have in our side. So I would request to avoid this kind of situation, but you are most welcome to apply in multiple project areas, especially like every single project area if you want, but we will also have the letter of credit from you, your financial supports from the banks or financial institution or from the company itself. So at some point, if those matching letters or finances are exceeding in the project areas you are applying, we will definitely reach out and request for additional documentation at that site. So there are mechanisms in the back to make sure that an ISP or provider is applying and kind of connecting the dots between their finances or financial strength of the company at that point as well. So that's some of the mechanism we have in the front end to prevent this kind of situation. But also at the same time, if an ISP wants to, reject any project area, it's not a desirable situation, but anyone can. We would highly recommend or request ISPs to do that during round 1 and round 2 of the negotiation, so that we can go back to the drawing board and basically pick the second winner for that particular areas.
Great, thank you. Time check, it is 9:47. We are doing our best to get to all the questions. I do want to remind everybody, we have another session next week on the 8th, same exact session. That one will be a little bit longer. So just remember that all questions that don't get answered today, you can email us and also join next week's session. A few others that are in here, Sandeep, can you confirm the proposed projects taking place in an existing, previously disturbed or distributed right-of-way will have expedited approval or classified it as Cat X? This is Amanda from JSI.
There is a categorical exclusion discussion going on, but there is not a guidance yet from NTIA, so I cannot comment on that part.
And then Chad from Trico, I believe there is no final regulation from NTIA.
Yeah, he's right.
Regard. Yep. Okay. Thank you. Back to Divya.
All right, thank you. So the next section is the barrier and permitting requirements. So under this, the applicants will identify any known critical crossings or permits related to the project. These could include federal lands, state government lands, tribal lands, and any state of Arizona managed lands. So these categories are divided under these 4 listed in the slide. So applicants will need to provide description of these permits, and additionally any steps that the organization has undertaken with regard to permitting processes for the identified critical crossing and permit must be described. The second one would be the barrier identification. So additionally, applicants will be required to identify potential obstacles and challenges associated with the project information, but not limited to detailed description of any concerns or issues encountered related to these critical crossings, and any narratives on supply chain issues that might come up and the plan to overcome them, and narrative on any workforce related issues that could potentially delay the project and the plan to overcome them. So the next section following this is the project financial section. Next slide, James. Yeah. Okay, so under this section, the first requirement, which is the letter of credit requirement. So as per BEAD No. 4, applicants are required to provide an LOC from a bank for 25% of the sub-award prior to the signing of the grant agreement. So it's important to note here that applicants are not required to provide the actual letter of credit during the project application phase. They're required to submit a commitment and also provide a committing letter from a bank stating to provide this LOC prior to signing of the grant agreement. So the first option under this is the BEAD No. 4 option. So applicants can choose this option and then submit a letter from the bank. If not choosing this option, the other 3 options that ACA is choosing to adopt for applicants is the NTIA programmatic waiver, which the first option is the subgrantee may obtain a letter of credit from a credit union instead of a bank. And if the applicants are choosing this option, they must submit a commitment letter from a credit union for issuing an LOC of 25% prior to signing of the grant agreement. So these are the 2 options that we discussed. If the applicant is choosing to provide a performance bond instead of a letter of credit, then they can select the option 2 under the programmatic waiver. And after committing here, they'll have to provide a letter from an acceptable surety committing to issue a performance bond equal to the sub-award amount, 100% of the award, prior to signing of the grant agreement. And the last option, if the applicant is not choosing the BEAD NOFO or the letter of credit from a credit union or the performance bond, the last option that the applicants can choose is the fourth option, where they can obtain a letter of credit or a performance bond for only 10% of the sub-award prior to signing of the grant agreement. And if the applicant chooses this option, then they will also be required to provide a commitment letter from a bank for issuing 10% of the LOC, or a surety letter from an acceptable surety committing to issue 10% of the performance bond prior to the signing of the grant agreement. So during the project application phase, all the applicants will have the option to choose from these 4 options, and based on the option selected, they'll be required to provide a commitment letter for issuing that during the project signing of the agreement. Following this is the project match and match funding details section. So applicants must provide summary information and about project funding sources and the details of the matching funds. This could be the project cost, the total grant amount requested, the total match, which is minimum of 25% for the BEAD projects. And following that, they will also have an option to choose for the matching waiver request. So here, applicants must choose if their project area would include the high cost areas defined by NTIA. And if it does, they should indicate if they plan to apply for the matching waiver request. That should also describe how this waiver will serve public interest and advance the goals of the BEAD program. But it is important to note that even if the request is submitted to ACA, the final decision will lie with ACA in terms of getting approval from the Assistant Secretary. But all applicants by default are encouraged to provide a minimum of 25% and above for meeting the requirements of this program. Okay, so following the LOC and match requirement section is the project financial section. So you're based on the option selected, which is Part A and or Part B, applicants will be required to provide the average cost to serve each eligible location. So for Part A, there will be 3 different fields for applicants to provide information. One is for 100% fiber deployment for unserved and underserved BSLs. So average cost to serve per location. And then average cost to serve per location per proposed CAI using fiber technology. And if outliers are defined, the average cost to serve those outliers using fiber technology. So based on these 3 inputs, the total project cost for A1, which is including CAIs and outliers for 100% fiber-based deployment, and A2, which is 100% fiber-based deployment, including CAIs, but excluding outliers, will be auto-populated on the portal. The second one under this, which is the mixed technology solution, here the applicants will have options, have 3 fields to provide options for. The first one would be average cost to serve per location using fiber-only BSLs and CAIs. The second would be average cost to serve BSLs with a reliable or alternative technology. And the third one, if it's applicable and the applicants have outliers or high cost BSLs defined, cost to serve with a reliable and alternative technology. So in this case, the applicants will have the option to also include the number of BSLs under each category and the proposed technology solution. After this, there's also project financials workbook, which will be a template provided to the applicants, where the applicants will provide the project level information within the Excel workbook and then upload it on the portal. It would include project budget information, capital costs, operating costs, and any financial related information specific to the project. Based on the workbook provided, the applicants will also provide a budget narrative explaining the assumptions and any expected financial challenges, as well as provide any additional analysis for proposing a sustainability of the project. Next section. So following
Okay,
this is,
so,
Mhm.
sorry, Divya, we do have a couple questions that are
okay.
In the chat. So I'm gonna ask Sandeep to unmute and line up for the questions. So first one we've got is the project, this is from Alan from South Central Utah. Is the project area and cost detail the only additional information required in the application?
Okay, I'm trying to understand the question, Alan. If your question is when you are applying, because during the pre-registration, every potential subrecipient is providing all the information, what exactly you need to apply for a project area. It's somewhat right what you said, the project area and cost details technology, those are required, but there are also some other requirements we mentioned during our presentation, like workforce related, climate resiliency, and then your low cost option, are you agreeing with our low cost options, your 1 gig symmetrical plan and their pricing, etc., etc. Yes, to answer your question, almost 60-70% would be project area, cost details, technology, and rest would be some other related application within the project area. Not sure if I was able to answer your question or if that was your question, but feel free to type additional question in the chat box.
Okay, 2 more in the chat. I appreciate everybody who also is typing in the answers. And just to note, it is 9:59 Mountain Standard Time, but we will go over to make sure that we get through all the topics here. Next question is, has the office spoken to financial institutions about the LOC requirements? And this is Allison Ellis. Allison, if you can let us know what organization you're from, that'd be great. Sandeep, can you answer that?
Yes.
Frontier, thank you.
I'm not sure about this question. I thought most of the LOC requirement that will come from the internet service provider or potential applicant. We can definitely guide you with the additional guidance that what need to be on the LOC requirement, but we did not interact with the financial institution. I don't think that's our scope of the our focus in this scope.
Great, that's it. Back to Divya.
Awesome, thank you. So the next section is the project workforce section. So these are the requirements based as per BEAD NOFO, where the applicants will have to submit narrative responses for each of the sections provided, and those will be scored accordingly as defined in the scoring rubric under ACS Volume 2. So first one would be that applicants must provide a narrative demonstrating the commitment for investing in appropriately skilled and diverse workforce. This could include development of partnerships with local providers in terms of training and hiring of underrepresented groups, or efforts in providing training or certification or licensures for the workforce. The second section under this is a fair labor and employment laws. So this was also a part of the pre-registration application. So applicants who have not provided these during the pre-registration applications can provide this during the project application. So this includes the organization's plans and certifications in terms of ensuring adherence to labor and employment laws, both for the applicant and for the affiliated contractors and subcontractors. So for the applicants who have identified contractors and subcontractors at the project application stage, this would be the time to provide it. The next section would be on the workforce arrangement. So the applicants must confirm and provide a narrative outlining the nature of the workforce arrangement, if it's a directly employed workforce or a subcontracted workforce, or it's a combination of both, and accordingly provide more information on the project wage structures and other organizational policies relevant to that. Following that is the appropriately compensated workforce the section where applicants will have to certify their adherence to Davis-Bacon Act or state prevailing wage laws, or certify that they'll submit a project employment and local impact report during the execution of the grant agreement. Based on the option selected here, they'll have to provide a plan for complying with the applicable wage laws. Next is the project labor agreement section. So applicants must confirm whether the project will include a project labor agreement that outlines the dedication for project labor agreements. And the next one is the local hire provisions. The applicants will be required to provide details on whether they'll prioritize local hires and detailing their organization's approach for ensuring that. Following that is the unionized neutrality section. So applicants are required to provide a written policy on union neutrality, and they must confirm that they refrain from using any intimidations or coercion against employees who try to join in union. So it's basically promoting the unionization of labor. All right, the next section is the labor peace agreement, where the organization must commit for using labor peace agreements as would be NOPO. And the second one following that is the properly skilled workforce, where applicants must provide plans for ensuring a properly skilled workforce. It could be in terms of promoting training programs or registers apprenticeships and other plans. And the credentials workforce would involve applicants to provide details about credential verification processes or introducing a credential passport system or recognition of prior learning. And then there's also a section on the misclassification of workers, where applicants must provide a description on the steps that are taken to prevent the misclassification and any workforce classification methodologies that the organization would have. The next one is the unionized workforce. So applicants must confirm if the applicant contractors, subcontractors workforce is unionized. And if an applicant confirms that the organizations and the contractor subcontractor is not unionized, then they must go ahead and fill in the workforce plan and project continuity sections. This would involve providing a breakdown of job roles, the corresponding FTE requirements, if it's not a unionized workforce. And also the next one would be the project continuity plan, where the applicant will be required to provide information of how they will ensure the supply of labor throughout the project and provide any plans for mitigating any challenges that would arise. The next section. So this is the local support and community engagement section. So as we know that as per BEAD NOFO, the applicants are required to engage with consultations with local units in governments and tribal nations that intersect with the proposed project area. So these are also a part of the scoring mechanism. So based on the consultations, they must provide letters of support or any confirmation that can include a financial commitment or in-kind contribution from the local tribal governments. And additionally, the applicants will also provide an engagement plan to support coordination with these communities. So both these categories will be scored based on the responses and the letters of support provided. The next section. The next section is the affordability section. So this is a section where applicants will be required to provide the affordable price, the details of the affordable price that they're planning to propose for priority projects and non-priority projects for ensuring 1 GPP symmetrical services for 5 years in terms of priority projects and 100 by 20 Mbps for non-priority projects. This must include all recurring charges to subscribers, including all taxes, fees, and charges imposed on the subscriber. So based on the proposed affordable total price here, the applications will be scored accordingly for each individual category. After the provision of the details on the affordability plans, the applicants must confirm their participation in a low-cost broadband service option. So these would be checkbox confirmations in terms of ensuring that they would participate in that, and they would allow for lifeline subsidy for the service lines, and also for enrollment and application of subsidies as well. So based on these confirmations, the applicants will also be required to provide a narrative or upload details of any existing or proposed low-cost broadband service plan explaining subscriber qualifications, speed, latency, cost, and any other available subsidies that they're planning to provide. Other than that, applicants will also be required to provide their organization's approach in marketing of the plan in terms of reaching out to the subscribers for promoting the low-cost plan. And following that, the applicants will also be required to confirm the service characteristics for the plan that they will propose, that in terms of providing at least 100 by 20 Mbps and making sure that it's a minimum of service of about 30 per month, but not exceeding 50 per month. And if the applicants are not able to provide that confirmation, they will provide more details on the waivers that the applicants will be planning to apply, indicating and explaining the reason for the waiver and how it's going to benefit the community and how it aligns with the larger policy goals and societal needs. Okay, so the last section under this is the MB, WB, and LSF inclusion. So this would entail a narrative responses in terms of addressing the 6 requirements for MBWBs and for providing the plan for placing qualified small and minority-owned businesses in the solicitation list and kind of providing their engagement for the BEAD broadband deployment project throughout. So this would include a program development implementation section, the outreach and partnerships approach, the monitoring and evaluation plans in terms of defining KPIs for measuring the success of these programs, and the reporting and documentation of involving these firms. The next one, the last one under this is the cybersecurity and supply chain risk management compliance. So this was also a part of the pre-registration application. So applicants who have not provided this during the pre-registration can now provide it during the project application. However, it's important to note that an update and then the most recent one has to be provided prior to signing the grant agreement, and it would be evaluated accordingly. The last one is the certifications. So based on all the information provided, the list of certifications that the applicants are required to provide in terms of certifying the compliance to all the BEAD NOFO requirements and adhering to FCC's communication rules, and in terms of following the NEPA and NHP monitoring requirements. So these will be the list of certifications that the applicant will certify by the end of the application. So this is all we have on the project application sections, but more information will be provided on the posted webinar and any FAQs that come up later. Now I'll hand over to Richmond to walk you all through the portals to get a sense of how the portal works.
Thank you, Divya. I just want to add Richmond, before you start, I will take 20 seconds to add. A lot of the requirement for our potential subgrantees and our partners and stakeholders, a lot of the requirement Divya talked about, these are going to be same if you apply for 20, 30, 40 project area. This is not going to be different. So these compliance certificates, these narratives we are requesting, these are going to be same. If you have any question regarding these narratives, Kelly will talk more about the technical assistance session. We can definitely provide you guidance on that, but just an FYI, these are going to be same across the board for your subcontractor agreement and everything. So just an FYI, these are not going to be different for every separate applications. Thank you, Divya. Really appreciate it. And Richmond, I will hand it over to you.
Sounds great. Hello, everyone. When you log into the portal, you'll land on a home screen like this. If your pre-registration has been completed and qualified, you'll see this green qualified here. You also receive an email notification, and you'll see, again, applications do not open till Monday. So if you log in now, it won't say applications are open, but it will at that time. If your pre-registration isn't completed, then this banner will let you know that applications are open, but you just need to complete your pre-registration prior to participating. I also want to call attention to this space over here. You can invite teammates to collaborate with you throughout the process. You can access the BEAD applications from here or from the Apply for BEAD. When you click on here, you'll be able to see the date when you submitted previous applications. And when we get through this stage into the stage when applications are being reviewed and approved and offers are going out, you'll have a BEAD review tab that will appear over here, so you can check the status of those completed submitted applications. If you want to start a new application, oh, by the way, one thing I want to clarify is, so you can also see the ones that were submitted, and then any of the ones that you will be able to save throughout the process. So anything that You can always open these ones that you've saved and continue editing, or if you decide to go in a different direction to start over, you can always delete them as well. Oops, I'm gonna go back here. All right, this is a test portal, so it's not going to look quite like what you're going to see. It's sort of like a laboratory environment, but this is fundamentally what you'll look at. So it'll be useful to see. When you'll first step will be to select your project area. You'll have a legend over here where you can do a bit of filtering and sorting. You'll probably want to use the PDFs that ACA provided and some of the other resources to do a bit more of your research on your geospatial tools, but this can give you a bit of an idea. I am going to move my picture of myself over here so I can keep going. You can select a project area. You cannot, if you select multiple, you will get an error because it is one project area per application. This area here, this will be kind of a details section. This is where you can see the eligible locations, the breakdown of those locations, and you will also see the project financials here. So all you'll need to do to see the financial, the reference benchmark for the various project areas would simply be to click on them. Once you've selected an area that looks good, you can continue. If you decide that you want to move back at this point, you can click select project area, which will take you backwards. If you click on any of these locations, you will be zoomed in. You go through the community anchor institutions. If they have a Fabric ID, we provide that. You can save your selections from there and move on to the next step. There are a couple ways you can move through the application depending on how you break it down. If you're going through it yourself or if you and some teammates are collaborating, you can click through just kind of like TurboTax style where you enter the information, then click next. These are the sections up here, and then these are the subsections over here. So this will, if you're clicking next, will take you through the subsections onto the next section. And you can also just click around up here and click into the various subsections if you're the project infrastructure person or something like that. There are various question types, as we've kind of discussed: short answer, long answer, click, multiple choice, and one where you're asked to upload documents and where we ask you to download a template, fill it out, and then re-upload it. In terms of the file size requirements for those, we really try to go just as big as we can feasibly can, kind of that balance between allowing you to be able to provide everything you need, but also recognizing that folks need to be able to download that and process it. So if you ever have any issues with uploading or downloading a file, I will provide right after this our help email for the technical service desk. So if you have any problems with the portal, always just use that email. We always respond within an hour, maybe 2 on the weekends. And if you need any help, we're happy to jump on a call with you, walk you through, help you get files uploaded, whatever you may need. I also want to call attention to, as you complete an area, one of the sections, you'll see a green check mark up top. So if you get to the end here and you think you're all set to go, and this is grayed out and you're all bummed, just go back here and look for the section that does not have the green check. That's most likely where there's a required question that you haven't answered. And just like, the standard required questions are marked with the red asterisk. One other thing I want to call your attention to is you can download your application at the end so that you have that for your records for later on. And other than that, I think those are the main things I wanted to cover. Maybe I'll go back here real quick and just add that to zoom on the map, you can either use your cursor, or we also have plus or minus zoom. And if on any of the questions, if you use, we do not use mobile for this. It's not mobile responsive. This is definitely a desktop application. But if you're using a smaller screen and maybe you're struggling with the horizontal width, use the command or control plus minus to make the text bigger or smaller. That can help you out if you're, having any difficulties with that. If, again, any formatting difficulties you have go beyond that, any portal issues, I will put that email in right as soon as I'm done speaking, and always use that for any of those technical questions. Other than that, that's my basic overview. I would recommend having ACA's guidance for the application open right next to you, because it's going to be a one-to-one walkthrough. So if you have that, then you'll have all the kind of additional information you'll need to move through and submit your application.
Okay, great. Thank you, Richmond. The guidance that Richmond is referring to is available on our website. I'll put that information into the chat. And there are some questions here. The first one for both, I think, Richmond and Divya, from Paul Fleming at WeCom. Good morning. Thank you for the clarifications. During the application process, there are a few items, example, cybersecurity policy, which provided during pre-qual do not have to be resubmitted during the app. Will the app auto-populate those have been done, or do we just note that it was handled during pre-qual? Also, for the narratives that are the same on each app, do we just copy and paste, or will those auto-populate per application?
Yeah,
I-
so
Go ahead. Sorry, Divya.
no, I can take that. So there is a question where the applicants are required to indicate that they've provided that during the pre-registration. And if they've done that, then they will not be required to answer any of those questions. So it will be the first option that they can get to choose. So they don't have to provide it again. And for the narratives, each individual narrative has to be populated for each application. It can be customized for each application based on the project area if required. So that's the reason why it will be different for each application.
Perfect. Thank you, Divya. There's a question from Chad Roop from Trico. What part of the application will be confidential and privileged information? Great question, Chad. I want to provide a clarification regarding confidential and privileged information here in this webinar. Any subrecipient, if you think that the information you are providing to us is a trade secret for your organization, like some of the cybersecurity plan, some of the supply chain management plan, please identify that. You can identify that in the portal, just connecting a letter with that. So that means when you are uploading a PDF, any documentation, please make sure that you are citing a letter in your company letterhead that these documents are confidential and privileged information. Then we will treat them as a trade secret. As you are all aware that we are a government agency, so anytime public information request can happen. There are few information which is definitely can be available during a public information request after the procurement, which is who applied for what project area, what kind of financial they offered, meaning matching and how much money they requested from ACA. But if you are a publicly traded company or a private company who has audited financials or financials from your CPA and you want us to treat them in a confidential manner, please add a letter. Also, in other hand, if you already went through the a pre-qualification and you forgot to add that letter, you can always send us a letter at broadband@azcommerce.com citing your pre-qualification, and that letter will preserve it at that way. So I really appreciate that question, and I wanted to clarify to our potential subrecipients.
Great. Thank you for that. We answered that live. And then there was another question in there from Ben Blink that I typed an answer to, but just for everyone's reference, Ben had asked if there will be public Q&A portal for process questions that come up during application rounds. And we are hosting the technical assistance sessions. Those are available on the website. I put that link in the chat. So those, again, are technical questions only related to the application and the portal itself. Those start next 2 weeks. They will start on the 14th. Okay, any other questions regarding the portal for Richmond? Or regarding the application while we've got everyone here?
Richmond just posted the tech support email for ready.net. So if you're having any issue submitting the portal, submitting documentation in the portal, please go ahead and email to that address. You can always copy broadband@azcommerce.com. That's a good way to kind of keep things on the track. Another thing I would also mention, as Richmond mentioned, those of you who went through, there are a number of internet service provider currently pre-approved in our system. And we really appreciate you being proactive and submitted those documentation to get pre-approved. You might not see anything in the system today, but in Monday, when the procurement opened, you will be able to see that in the system. the internet service provider who did not submit any documentation yet just got approved in our portal, but did not start the process. I would highly recommend to start that process right now. It will take us 72 hours. So if you submit that today, we'll probably start processing that on Monday and give you approval on Wednesday, or conditional approval, however it comes, which form it comes. So until then, you won't be able to see any financials, project related, area related data. So please submit that as soon as possible so that you can start working on your application.
Okay, there's another question. Are there weekly office hours during the application cycle? And yes, those are the technical assistance sessions. And those will be hosted weekly until February 4th. So the application round 1 closes February 5th. So we have one last session available on the 4th. So those will start weekly on the 14th and run all the way through the 4th. Again, that link is in the chat. And I can see there's a raised hand, and I'm wondering if that person is able to, oh, it went away, type their question into the chat. But the raised hand did go away. Okay, so I will start wrapping this up. I know that we all have stayed on 23 minutes longer than planned. Thank you so much for this. We will extend next week's session. So just as a recap, this exact session will be offered next week on the 8th. Those webinars are available on our website. You can watch the recordings, and you can also register for next week's session. It's the same thing. It will be extended to an hour and a half to make sure we have enough time. These are recorded, posted on the website. Same thing with the Q&A sessions, which are technically called the technical assistance sessions. Those will be available on the website. I'll get that deck from today uploaded on our website by the end of today. And I think that covers everything from our end. So again, all the resources, everything we have referenced is available on our website. Please just pay attention to the tabs, and you'll click on the subgrantee application tab. That's where all of the resources, the maps, everything lives under that tab. So there are several tabs there for each phase of the BEAD implementation process. That subgrantee tab has the information you'll need, and the webinars tab has all the webinar details. And unless Sandeep has anything he'd like to add, I think this wraps us up for today. And if you'd like to join us again next week, definitely register for the webinar on the website.
So much.
All right, thank you, everyone. Have a great week. Happy New Year, and maybe we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.